we have one of the most exciting new AI companies that we've come across. Their founder and CEO, Mike Ritchie. Mike, are you here? There he is.
Since we're all doing family updates, my mom does not use ChatGPT, although my father-in-law did ask me to install ChatGPT on his iPhone the other day, so I'll count that as a win. So at Definite, we're building a data analyst that never sleeps. That's our kind of pie in the sky goal. We're obviously not there today, but the basic idea is that the companies that we've talked to today, companies that I've worked at in the past, the data team is woefully outnumbered by other operators within the company. It's generally like a 10 to 1, 15 to 1 ratio of data people to the sales team, the CFO, the finance manager. All these other roles are just completely swarmed with data requests and simply can't keep up. It slows the entire company down and obviously stresses the data team out. They want to do deep work. They want to do like really meaningful long-term projects that deliver value for the company over the next decade. And they're constantly swarmed with ad hoc requests. So kind of like how I got into this. So I founded a company a few years ago called Sequel. Vowed to never name my company after a pun again. For anyone that knows SQL, they'll see the cleverness behind the name Sequel. I actually thought of it in the shower and named the company the next day. So it was a terrible idea. Don't do it. But one thing that I discovered while working on Sequel was GPT-3. So SQL had nothing to do with AI. It was a very standard SaaS analytics application. If anyone's really deep into data, it was one of the early companies in the reverse ETL category. So we basically helped sync company or data from your database into places like HubSpot or Google Sheets or other places that you wanted the data to be accessible and live. And one of the things we did purely for content, like this was like a kind of like marketing stunt, was to see if we could automate the job of a data analyst with GPT-3. And I'll save you reading the blog post. Totally not possible at the time. So GPT-3 was simply not good enough. But if you squinted, you could see the sparks of something like pretty amazing. What actually triggered this was Sam Altman posting a demo where he was writing Python code with a very early version of GPT-3. And we figured, hey, can we do the same thing with SQL? And realized like, hey, this might be something. So after my last company was acquired, Sequel, had this idea in the back of my head, and kind of perfect timing is around the launch of 3.5 or ChatGPT, was that this got way, way better. So from GPT-3 to GPT 3.5, which is the model that powers ChatGPT, then obviously now GPT-4, it just keeps getting better. And with a ton of engineering effort, a ton of work to pull in existing data sources that the company's already using to better define and better understand their data stack, we are getting very close at Definite to building this data analyst that never sleeps. So this is what a lot of people think of when they think of analytics, is a dashboard in Tableau or some other product. The biggest problem is that very few people actually use them. So especially when you log into these platforms, you're looking for the answer normally to a very specific question that you have. And in these analytics platforms, there's generally hundreds of dashboards, thousands of reports, and very infrequently do they actually answer that one question that you have. So what we've built, and actually this slide did get popped in here. So this is the point I made earlier around being woefully outnumbered. But an example of a workflow that you might be logging into an analytics dashboard or anywhere to try to find the answer. Super simple example, and I'm sure you guys can't see this now that I'm realizing, it's super small here, but an answer as simple as, hey, show me all the information about this email address, right? And you might log into an analytics platform and be able to search and filter for it. You might be able to pull a few spreadsheets up and find it, but that data is somewhere in your data warehouse. So almost every company of any size has an SQL database that has pretty much all of their customer data in it. It's just really inaccessible to 99% of the company or 95% of the company. So what we've built here with Definite is an integration directly into Slack. Almost every team we've talked to uses Slack. Obviously, a lot of larger companies don't use it yet or use Teams instead. But this same exact infrastructure that we've built will work in any of these like kind of chat interfaces. So in this example, we're asking, hey, I'm having trouble with the order from mritchie@gmail, did it ship, and what product were we supposed to get, and then also was everything in stock. And instead of asking a data analyst this, which every company we've talked to has this dreaded Slack channel called like data requests or data team urgent or whatever it might be, 3 exclamation points. So in this case, we're calling this Slack channel operations. But instead of asking a data scientist to stop whatever they're doing or data analyst to drop whatever they're doing and pull this very like mundane task, we're simply adding the definite Slack bot. It's pulling this entire thread in and breaking down which of these tasks could actually be completed by running SQL. So the first step it's taking is like kind of understanding the context of this thread, understanding like what channel it's in, understanding who's asking it, what questions they've asked before, all of these types of things that are happening in the background. But it's able to break this down into a couple of steps. Did the order for Michael get shipped? Did the products that he ordered, were they in the recent order? Were the order products in stock? And then kind of as a bonus here, it's realizing, hey, when people ask these same types of questions in the past, they also usually like to see, is this shipping time out of whack with the average? Like what's the average shipping time in the past month relative to this? So in this case, Definite is able to respond really quickly with the exact data they're looking for in a narrative form. So instead of being pointed to a dashboard that has like 50 different charts on it, it's just like precisely and concisely answering your question. So the order was shipped on 6/3. There are 3 items in the order. It has links to the orders because those links are also in the database. And it's able to give the answer, it's shipped in 4 days. We're checking on the average shipping time, creates a nice visualization of the average shipping time, and then gives you the raw data. So like that's like an awesome demo, and that's how the product works today. Like how were we able to do that? The first thing that we've done is pulled in all of the existing query history. If they use DBT, we pull in their DBT models. Basically anything we can get our hands on, we pull that into a centralized data catalog in Definite. And then we're able to explain those prior query history language to match them to new questions. We're able to use their DBT models to understand how tables are related. So if anyone's tried to build this type of product in like a hackathon, which I've seen many attempts at, they almost always bomb on a join. That's something that we've solved and we've been working on a lot. We extract all those kind of like tasks from the thread. If the user doesn't get the answer that they're looking for, they can simply react to the question or the answer that Definite posts, and we'll try again. And we can intake further guidance. Hey, like I'm not looking for data from Stripe. I'm actually looking for data from this other source of revenue we have. Like you can kind of direct the eye a bit towards the right data set. And then obviously beyond a CSV, as much as possible, we try to directly answer the question versus just dropping data into a thread. And you're kind of ending on ending at least the portion around Definite. So a lot of these, a lot of the products or a lot of the use cases for analytics products is to get the answer to a question, right? So we're kind of finally delivering the type of experience people like, at least in my experience and in our conversations, actually want, which is the ability to simply ask a question and get that answer back. Currently, the product's built right into Slack, so that obviously helps with getting the whole team on the same page with the results that are returned and understanding whether or not the results are accurate. And then on top of that, we've also built a workspace that you can publish data in. So for those like dashboard type scenarios where you really want a consistent source of truth for those like 5 to 7 KPIs that your company has, you have a beautiful like Figma-like surface that you can kind of like zoom out, zoom in, and get the analytics that you need. Some things that we learned while building Definite, because I know a lot of people probably listening to this are either building with AI or considering it. The first kind of tip, and something that I don't see mentioned terribly often, is that for really complex workflows, it helps to have this concept of a triage prompt. So what many people find is that they start an AI product and they may start with a 500-word prompt, and that prompt quickly doubles like every week as they're adding more and more scenarios that they're trying to account for. And so a concept that we found super helpful is having this idea of a triage prompt where the first prompt is simply trying to break the task down into a category or a subtask that gets sent to a much more complicated prompt that's specifically designed for that task. The next one. Vector databases. So for anybody that's been using AI for a while, they've probably bumped into this concept. But vector databases are extremely helpful when that first problem that I mentioned you start bumping into, where you're running into like 10,000 token prompts. A vector database is basically an easy way to encode a ton of information, and very, very cheaply. OpenAI just dropped the price on their text embedding solution by 75%. They had earlier dropped by 90%, so it's now like less than 1% of the original cost, or single digit percentages of the original cost. But basically, this is a way to encode all of the data you could ever imagine and still only pay like hundreds or thousands of dollars for it. I think the last quote I saw on the metric to encode the entire internet was $12 million. So you could embed the entire repository of the internet, so like all of Wikipedia, all of everything, for $12 million. $12 million sounds like a lot, but the internet's really big. So it's really not, it's an extremely cheap way to get started with AI is to use vector database. Vector databases themselves can be pretty expensive, but if you're using Postgres, there's an extension called PG Vector. That's a great place to start. We haven't run into any problems with it, so it's a great place to get started with embeddings without paying too much. In terms of feedback mechanisms, a lot of products, including ChatGPT, have this like thumbs up, thumbs down indicator. What we've learned is that no one uses them. So if you think of it yourself, like as a builder, you're like, oh, this is going to look great. This is going to be very useful for the user to track. But then when you think of it as like a user yourself, like how often do you actually use that in ChatGPT, the thumbs up, thumbs down? So what we found is that you really need to find a mechanism outside the explicit like feedback mechanisms you have in your product to track user behavior and understand whether or not what you're generating is any good. So some of the things that we've done, for example, is if we generate SQL and the user changes the SQL, that's an indication that it was probably wrong the first time. So that's something that we can understand and kind of like mark as like a bad answer. Another thing that was announced in this, and I created this slide on Monday, and it's already out of date. So OpenAI just released a feature that almost nullifies a lot of what I'm talking about here. But if anyone saw it, function calling was released in the last version of GPT. So I think it's in both. I think it might only be in GPT-4, but it might be in 3.5 as well. But you can basically pass in explicit definitions of the data that you want back. And I think I have another slide on this. I'll jump on. I'll go into that topic a little bit more after this. But the next topic was around test systems. These things are obviously non-deterministic, especially if you are really pushing them to their limits in terms of like the results that you get back. So you can ask the same question, the exact same question twice, and get two different answers back. So having a test system was extremely important to us because people are depending on us for like accurate data, accurate results back. So we have a pretty sophisticated test system that runs on every change that we make to either the prompt or the underlying infrastructure that feeds the prompt. And it's something that I think the biggest learning here is it's something you're gonna have to build yourself because there simply aren't products for this yet. But it's super valuable because the angst I always had before we had the test system was, hey, I really want to change this one thing. I think it's going to make a big improvement, but how do we know what edge cases or additional problems we're introducing by making this change? And the test system has calmed my anxiety and angst around that. This is kind of digging deeper into this idea of always responding with JSON. So for anyone that's not familiar with JSON, it's basically just a structured data format. So for anyone that's used like ChatGPT a lot, obviously it generally just responds in narrative form. So it's a paragraph or a few sentences of text. When you're building an application, you probably want some more structure around what's returned by the model. So in our case, obviously we're asking the model to generate SQL. We're asking it to do other things like provide a title or provide follow-up questions. We're asking it to do a lot of different things, and we need that data back in a very structured and consistent format. One of the products or projects out there, this is actually an open source project called Guardrails. You can see this demo is quite impressive. They're basically taking medical notes, giving ChatGPT a short description of the bits of this short note that they want to extract out. And then ChatGPT is super effective at understanding that structure. So on the left-hand side, there's an XML document, which again is just another way to structure data. On the right is the response from OpenAI. And it's able to take this, kind of poorly written sentence, probably written quickly by a doctor, and spit out very well structured information. So correctly extracting the age, correctly extracting the gender, the symptoms, and the medications that the person's on. The note I made, or the thing I made around OpenAI's function calling is this is somewhat now built into OpenAI. So you can actually describe these structures that you want back now. This was just released this week. We've played around with it a bit, and it's very good. It does exactly what it says on the box. But this type of concept is super important if you're planning to use the outputs of an LLM further on down the line, like so further on down into production. And I think that's it. The A.Team special, so we're offering 2 weeks of unlimited data engineering to help kind of onboard you to Definite if this is a product that you think your team could benefit from. And you can find us at definite.app.
All right. Bring up the hot seat chair. Let's see if we have any questions. Do you have any questions for Mike?
You want to grab this before I forget?
Oh, the clicker?
Yeah.
It's a great idea. We got one back here. Do you mind just coming up a little bit? Because this doesn't stretch all the way. Yeah. We think it's okay.
Just really quickly, you mentioned your test system, and I'm just super curious to hear more about like how you're actually evaluating if it's getting worse or better.
Oh yeah, great. So we are in a very fortunate position that there are correct answers to the things that we're asking. A lot of especially if you're writing copy or you're writing content with an LLM, that's not possible to very purely grade things. We have a very simple pass-fail of did the query actually run? So is it syntactically correct? And we're able to generate test cases against static data sets that we have. So we have data sets of city bike travels, all of these various public open source data sets that we're able to test different questions against, and we already know the answer. So we're able to check against whether or not those actually execute. So in our use case, and that's why I think a lot of these systems need to be built from scratch because the test system is going to completely depend on your use case. And we're in the fortunate position that there actually are correct answers to the things that we're asking.
Amazing. Any more questions? All right, come on down. Maybe swap out. This has become the question seat. We have a hot seat. We have a question seat.
Thank you for the presentation. Just want to know early on in your startups, right, life cycle, right? What was some of the difficulties for you to acquire your customers, and how did you go about doing that in a way that really is helpful to both your product design and also to build the big funnel that every startup needs? Thank you.
Yeah, great question. So early on, we definitely went pretty broad with the messaging in terms of what we were building. And as we talked to more customers and tried to understand their hair on fire problem, the thing that the data team was struggling with the most, or the operators that want data were struggling with the most, it was definitely this ad hoc request situation that a lot of companies find themselves in, where they're in a 7-day pipeline as soon as they submit a request. So we have, we obviously have a very grand vision. Every, startup has a grand vision of being, an AI-powered analytics platform, but focusing down on that one use case that we could really nail right now was what started to get us started with really building a good pipeline, was having a very crisp value prop of this one specific use case that they don't have to strip out everything that they've spent the last 5 to 10 years building. That's where we found our early niche.
I think we have time for one more question. If there's anyone else? All right, come on down.
I'm curious, do you use any tools, or have you benefited from any tools for managing prompts, or keeping track of them, or anything like that?
Yeah, this is, I think, one idea every AI founder has is oh, I could probably build this too, something to make prompts better. We haven't found anything that's better than just using GPT itself. ChatGPT is really good about helping you better your prompts, and we haven't found anything that's better than that.